Hello, this is Rick Harnish. I'm the Executive Director of the High Speed Rail Alliance here in Chicago. Really excited about today's program. Uh, uh, we've got Chris Ott, our Deputy Director, up in Madison running the show, and then two great speakers with a very great topic. So for those who don't know us, we are a 501c3 nonprofit group. We help folks like you understand what great trains can be in America, why we need to make great trains a reality, and steps that you can take to help persuade your state leaders and your federal leaders to make it a reality. So we are supported by our members. If you like this program, if you like the idea of having great trains across the country, please go to highspeedrail.us and go up to the Become a Member. Even if you are already a member, you can still hit that button and make an additional donation so that we can keep doing this exciting stuff. We're excited to have Dreamstar with us. I will have an experience of my own life where it used to be a reasonable schedule to get from Chicago to New York by overnight train. Could have been a little bit faster, but it still worked. And boy, it made my trips to New York much nicer. There's a number of places from Chicago I wish I could take a train like that, like Chicago to Cincinnati, Chicago to Cleveland, or Chicago to St. Paul. It's a great way to get service started in markets that don't have a lot of service. So we're excited about our speakers. And Chris, if you could do the introductions, be great.
Sure. Thanks, Rick, and thanks everyone for being here today. And thanks to our guest speakers. We're excited to have them here today. We've been talking about this for a while, since probably last summer, and today is finally the day. Joshua Dominic is the CEO of Dreamstar. He co-founded the company after experiencing significant shortfalls in today's travel options and realizing that other countries already had a working solution, but one that needed further development here for us in the American market. Joshua is responsible for the company's overall vision and direction based on 13 years of experience in startups, finance, strategy, and logistics. Before creating Dreamstar, he served in the United States Air Force Reserves, specializing in logistics and mobility, before going on to graduate with a degree in economics from Columbia University. After a brief financial career focused on corporate strategy and acquisitions, he transitioned to startups focused on business development for Darktrace and Cloud Kitchens. He was also a partner and co-founder in Falcon Funds, a search fund focused on finding, acquiring, and operating businesses in the lower middle market. Also with us today is Thomas Eastmund, who is Dreamstar's Chief Strategy Officer and fellow co-founder. He shares the common vision for transforming the travel business through a unique alternative. He is a senior attorney skilled in negotiation, legal compliance, arbitration, trial practice, and business litigation. He is responsible for strategic direction, legal affairs, and operations for Dreamstar. He brings 20 years of experience in transportation, infrastructure, and public law to the company. His previous experience includes positions with leading law firms in Southern California, including Sanders, Roberts, SSM, and Holland and Knight. We'll need to wrap up this session promptly today or even a little early before the top of the next hour, but we'll get to as many questions as we can after the presentation. For now, if you have a comment, please use the chat feature, and if you have a question, please use Zoom's Q&A feature. It makes it easier to keep them separately that way, and we can get to as many questions as we can. But for now, please take it away, Joshua and Thomas.
Hey everyone. So today we're going to share a little bit about what we're doing at Dreamstar Lines. Let's get this up. Can you guys see the first slide?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for that introduction. That was great. Really excited to speak with everybody today and kind of share the vision that we are building with Dreamstar. The thing that brings us all together is we all want to see better rail infrastructure and services in the United States. And I'm honored to be a small part of that to make it better for all of us. As I'm sure everybody knows here, the United States currently has some transportation problems. Planes are more often getting delayed or, unfortunately, given the news past few weeks, crashing, running into things. The overall consumer experience is not been great for a significant number of travelers. And there are growing concerns that flights are also not that environmentally friendly. Cars, which is the dominant way that most trips are taken in the United States today, they also have problems. As metro areas grow more congested, it gets harder and harder to manage the traffic that results from kind of squeezes when everybody comes in. It gets tougher to build the new infrastructure as the land value goes out. And by and large, it seems like most highway widening projects don't do anything other than make traffic worse. So that leads us to rail. As all of you know today, passenger rail is primarily done by Amtrak, particularly over long distances, and then short local metro trips. That said, it's only about 2% of the total rideshare for trips over 50 miles. Right now, a lot of the trips for over 50 miles, the schedules are quite inconvenient and not that great. And right now, what we're seeing in consumer taste is that people are looking for different ways to travel. They're open to alternatives. You're seeing services like Jet Suite X, which is their kind of private jets that are accessible to everybody, becoming more popular. You're seeing the airline that does the pets. Pets are now a big way, and traveling with them, a big thing, and now traveling with them is quite a hassle. I don't know how many people here have dogs or cats and have tried to travel with them. And then, of course, Europe has had their night train kind of revolution the last 10 years, where it's really become more popular. And particularly in the US, what we're seeing is travelers want rail. Today, trips over 50 miles are about 1 to 2%, and versus 20 to 60% across Europe and Asia, depending on how you measure it and where you're looking. But what we're seeing is that people are demanding more rail. 75% think that more trips should be doable by rail. We're seeing ridership grow year over year, and actually Amtrak hit all-time ridership numbers. There's clearly a growing demand for passenger rail, and it's our view that we have an opportunity to go after a segment of the market that's currently not being targeted. So right now, the kind of four big players that get a lot of news share or move a lot of people are Brightline, the California High-Speed Rail Authority, Amtrak, and then us. We're each going for kind of different segments of the travel market. Brightline is focused on routes that are under 300 miles. The California High-Speed Rail is solely focused on California. And Amtrak, right now, the way their funding works is their routes are generally planned for over 750 miles. For some of the longer ones, this makes it a little, kind of quite a long time to be on a train, which can make it significantly less competitive than flying or driving for a significant portion of travelers. But with our model, we realize there seems to be a gap in service between about 300 to 750 miles, where travel is kind of a pain in the butt. It takes you time, anywhere from a half a day to almost a full day, depending on how far you're going and if you're driving or flying, you hit delays, whatever. And so that's the segment of the market that we're going to go after. And there's a lot of good evidence that this is a pretty popular thing. So in Europe, you have things like Nightjet, the Caledonian Sleeper, the European Sleeper, and then in the United States, you have the Amtrak Auto Train. That's probably the closest. It's a little bit longer than what we're targeting, but probably the closest thing to a comparison of a train service that we're and want to improve upon in the United States. Our model is to provide hotel-like rooms and services to travelers so that they can skip all of the hassles that are associated with flying and driving today. You don't have to worry about losing time to travel during the day. One of the big advantages is that on an overnight train is that you can sleep most of the journey. So you actually have less total waking time. It's also much more comfortable, convenient, and environmentally friendly than the other travel alternatives. And lastly, and this is a big one we've gotten a lot of feedback on, is we'll be able to allow people to bring their automobiles, which is going to be great for families who have family cars, as well as their pets. So what this looks like from a process perspective, we're able to cut out a lot of the inefficiencies that are associated with air travel today. You don't have to worry about the same type of fighting traffic to get to the airport, because a lot of the areas that we serve were no more than a 20-minute drive to the train station. You don't have to deal with the security, the hassle of luggage. Actually, recently I just took a plane from Salt Lake City to Long Beach. And between driving to the airport and then I had to wait almost an hour for my luggage to get from off the plane to like I have the luggage in hand. And these kind of delays, they add up, especially in the short, medium distance where you're like, okay, I left the house at 9:30 in the morning, and now it took me 5 hours for a hour and a half flight. It's like it's frustrating. And I would much rather take an overnight sleeper train. We're starting with one of the most popular travel corridors, which is connecting the Bay Area to the Southern California megalopolis, so Los Angeles, Riverside, and Orange County. And it's one of the most popular routes. So we think that this is a great place to kind of test the concept. And it's our intention that if it goes well, we can find other routes where this will be popular and really help serve the communities that we're in. You may or may not know, we've gotten a substantial amount of press coverage. This is some of the original things that were featured when we signed our MOU with Union Pacific. And we're now working towards the next steps of securing the remaining track access agreement. And some of the things that we've done so far, secured kind of the trains that we want, started the initial work. You can see some of the photos here. And we've received some support letters from members of government at both the federal, the state, and then local levels. So that's a real quick overview on Dreamstar. I don't like long presentations, so I wanted to give plenty of time for Q&A. So with that, I will open it up to the floor.
Thank you
Great.
very much for that quick overview. Can you talk about what the accommodations would be? And you had a slideshow going there, but can you talk more about what the levels of service were, et cetera?
Yeah, so I'm gonna show you some photos. Some of these photos will include conceptual ideas. I'll focus on the ones that we're going to target. So that way you guys know what you're looking at. So there's some exterior. So it's our intention to offer kind of 4 classes of accommodation when we start. So we're going to offer kind of a standard, what we're calling a standard, which is going to be about the equivalent to like a lie flat business class flight that you might get on an Emirates or for international flight. We're going to offer standard bedrooms, which will have a shower and a bathroom. We'll also have suites, which are a little bit larger. They're going to have a queen size bed, kind of a lounging area, living room area. And then lastly, we're gonna have family rooms that are really designed for people who are traveling in groups. Ideally sleep up to 6, probably more closely, 4 adults, 2 kids. They'll be tight, but it offers a way for people to kind of travel with their family.
I'm sorry, I had a little bit of technical difficulties. Can you go back to the standard class?
Yeah.
So explain what we're looking at here in this floor plan.
Yeah, so this is Tom, do you want to explain the kind of the why one of it is straight on and one of them is slightly kind of arched?
Yes, and I
Chevron.
wanted to clarify the image. That's designed so you can see the full accommodation there, but they're not going to be like open section. Each one of those pods is separate. It will probably have like a glass partition with a curtain, so you have increased privacy. The reason we've got them in that angled configuration on one side and then sort of the fore and aft on the other side is we're able to increase the amount of revenue sleeping space by I forget the exact percentage, but it's significant. Going all fore and aft wastes some space, and you're able to fit more accommodations in for the same car and keep your prices controlled as a result.
And importantly, offer a little bit more space to people sitting in the cars.
So is that 2 seats facing each other for day and then bunk beds at night?
No, it's each roomette is a truly single roomette. Yeah, we looked at the Amtrak roomette accommodations and just they're pretty tight for 2 people.
They are, yeah. As a person who likes taking night trains, there does need to be a more of an economy class. So I'm glad you guys are looking at the single rooms. Um, I was looking at a couple of video reviews of the new Night Jets closed pods.
The pods, yeah.
I could not ride in one of those. Um, but I'm curious because I did enjoy the slumber coaches. That there were just a few of them out there, and they lasted probably into the 90s. And that seemed like a fairly efficient way to get a lot of beds in there. Did you guys look at those?
So
Josh, you want to take that or?
I was going to go the cultural angle, but if you want to go.
Yeah, so we did look at those. In fact, at one point we were basically thinking of duplicating. There are some ADA issues that come up with those. We've looked at all kinds of creative geometries, and it's still possible we may wind up in the future with an even more economy, a less expensive sort of slumber coach type accommodation. I was just laughing because as I was trying to figure out how to get X many accommodations in the car so the revenue for the standard car could match the first class car. I remember thinking in high school that you would never use the Pythagorean theorem again. And so as I was doing this in the back of a napkin, I'm like, aha, a squared b squared equals c squared. And we figured out how to get the uh, extra space in by angling it on one side.
Okay, and I'm assuming that each of those angles looks at a window. So the chair is facing the window and you're looking out there.
That's correct.
Okay. And in a similar vein, the night jets and actually all night trains that I've been on for the most part have coach accommodations. Um, is that a consideration or?
So to start, we kind of looking at it first as a cultural problem, which sounds a little silly to everybody in this group because we all love trains and would take it in all sorts of different ways, and I have. But I think it's kind of there's an element of how do we really get people who aren't already into trains on board? And this is kind of the model that we developed that, hey, this is going to be what, like, if I go to somebody and I say, hey, look, you're going to have you can sit upright. My view in our testing of talking to people is that they're like, yeah, I can do that. I can take a red eye on an airplane and I can get there quicker. It was our view that the value proposition of having a good night's sleep while you're commuting to your destination is what's going to really drive people to try it. That doesn't mean that we won't eventually offer a coach accommodation one day. We will probably have people who are doing kind of intermittent stops between 2 points if there's no, equivalent transportation option. Like, as an example, there's no Amtrak train that runs to Santa Barbara at midnight. If that's how our schedule works out and you wanted to take it from LA to Santa Barbara, like, you could sit in kind of the lounge car that we have. So that's going to probably be the closest to a coach accommodation. But it's not kind of where we're starting the thrust of the business.
Yeah, this is kind of like the Tesla Model S before you move on to the more democratic Model X. Yeah, you provide a premium product, and then I think we'll see whether we can fit in. We want to serve whoever we can serve, and so if there's a market for coach style or more, or I don't want to say rough sleeper like they have in Europe, but or Asia, but if there's room for that, we'll be pleasantly surprised.
Well, let's not go to what a hard seat in Asia is not. I don't think it's actually hard, right?
Yes.
So no privacy at all. I don't think that's where we want to go.
No.
And I'll tell you, I had this. Our air conditioning will be actual air conditioning and not ceiling fans. I years ago I took a train in Myanmar, and it was an overnight train. We couldn't get a sleeper room, and they're like, well, do you want first class? And they go, oh, it's air conditioned. How bad could it be? And it ended up being like 100 degrees, 100% humidity, like at night. It was rough. And they didn't turn off the lights in the main cabin. It was an experience that I do not intend to replicate here for anybody.
Excellent. So one of your slides seemed to imply that you've already at least got control of cars. What is the status of of actually building these cars out?
Yeah, we've identified some contenders. Negotiations are still ongoing, so I can't say too much. We've identified some trains that we think are attractive for what we want to do. But as you can imagine, it's probably not wise to spend a lot of money acquiring trains until you've completed securing track access agreement.
Yes, yes. You reminded me of Marlboro was going to do a train, and they built the trains before they got the whole thing put together. I don't think they ever ran.
Yeah, so Amtrak tweeted a few years ago on their page some inspirational quote about don't take the path well traveled, carve your own path. And I thought that was not necessarily the best advice a train company should be giving. I generally don't like the trains to be carving their own path. I like them to have tracks to run on first. So we've been focusing extensively on making sure we've got tracks to run on and a lack of interference, so we can keep what is fortunately a very flexible timetable.
So, can you talk a little bit about why you start with LA to San Francisco?
Because it is a big, fat, hanging curveball. It is the most lucrative and busy route that is just happens to be exactly one good night's sleep apart. And on top of that, the coastline, which connects the two along the coast versus the Central Valley, is a ghost town. So there's willingness to try to monetize that underused asset by the owners of it.
I think that gets to a question that's probably on a number of people's minds. For various reasons, a lot of rail advocates believe that the class ones are simply opposed to passenger trains. I've been making a case that if you put together a different kind of business deal, that's not true, that they are. So I think what you laid out there was the Union Pacific has a railroad that needs more traffic. And so they're willing to have a discussion about some sort of different business deal than what Amtrak offers. Is that right?
Yes, we have Joshua, do you want, I don't, let me know how much leeway I have here, but we have in our discussions, we can't discuss some of the specifics, but we do have they are willing to make this work if it works for both of us. And
Okay.
I have several thoughts maybe that might be appropriate for a later time as to why that might be, but we've been really impressed with our partners at Union Pacific.
Excellent.
It was about finding a model that worked for both of us, and our model is a little bit more unique than like a daytime commuter service. So
Okay.
it allowed some flexibility for both sides that it seems that we're happy with.
So
Excellent.
like in the musical Oklahoma, the cowboy and the farmer can be friends. You know, we don't need to be mortal enemies. There's ways to have us both be happy, and there's been, I think we can agree, a fairly adversarial model between passenger rail and freight ever since the advent of Amtrak. And you know, we're kind of like water. We like to try to flow around the congestion, and fortunately, the overnight model in particular gives us the flexibility to do that.
Excellent. I would, as if I can pitch a little bit, we're working on a series. We've done the first two. We've got a third one and then a fourth one coming, describing how the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority was able to work with the Union Pacific to create a new model for running trains between San Jose and Sacramento that has been very successful. So it is, there are ways to do good, high quality passenger trains on Class 1 railroads if we keep it going. So what's the schedule look like for this in your guys' view?
So the schedule is that ideally you're sleeping the majority of your journey. So call it, you have an hour to wind down in the evening, 8 hours to sleep, an hour to get ready in the morning. And obviously that's going to depend on where exactly you get on and where exactly you get off. So we're approximating that. But anywhere from, we're still working on the specifics, but imagine leaving between 8 and 10 at night and getting there between what is that? 6 and
6 and
8
8:30. I think
morning.
we're looking for a pre-9 o'clock arrival.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
right.
all up in the air with dispatching, but that's the general idea. Get on Union Station at 10, arrive at 4th and King at 8:30, just for a
I get it.
ballpark estimate.
That certainly is a lot better than the taking a bus from Union Station to Bakersfield and then taking a train around to Emeryville, going the long way around the mountains, and then taking a bus from Emeryville to San Francisco.
Well, here's even another real world example when you take into consideration the geographies and the climate. I was at a dinner last night, and one of the members of a dinner, one of the people, I don't know what's the word there. One of the other people ended up being very late to the dinner because his flight was delayed 3 hours in SFO because of the rain. So we think that one of the advantages that we'll have is like that's not really going to be an issue for us in the same way that it can be in the Bay Area when they get the brutal fog or weather.
Long as obviously everybody is susceptible to weather, but it will take something like a horrendous mudslide to cause that kind of delay.
Right. And then I think last in my questions, oh no, there's 2 more. So cars. Again, there was a slide that implied you can take your automobile with you. Is that planned for opening day or?
Yes, the idea is that you can bring your car with you. Operationally, how that works out, it's still part of our negotiation. We have a couple different ways we can do that. But the specifics haven't been reached beyond like, yeah, we don't have a problem with that. So, yeah, sorry, I can't speak more to it.
Yeah, we have a couple of creative ideas to make that work.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then,
The idea would be that you drive up to the station, you get out, you hand us your keys, and then you go onto the train. And then when you wake up in the morning, your car's waiting for you in the parking lot.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That would be a very convenient way to travel.
Right.
And then the last one is, I mentioned a couple of examples. So like today, the Amtrak train to Cincinnati from Chicago is really slow. And so it leaves Chicago at like 5, if I remember right. And it gets to Cincinnati at 3 a.m. And I've also often wondered, what if you had a train that left at 9:30 at night, and then you kind of ran it slower so it got to Cincinnati at 7? I'm sure there's other places like that where you could get a toehold in the market by starting with sleeper trains. Do you think there are other markets like that?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just one of those, let's get a demonstration case first, and then we'll talk about the others.
Yeah, it's my view that the challenge that we actually had, like, there's a lot of challenges in building the service, as you can imagine. But the most fuzzy one is culture, right? Right now, I mean, I know I talk about how trains are definitely the ridership is increasing, but that's a big part of that is dependent on where you live. So, for example, you can take the train to where we live to, San Luis Obispo, to Santa Barbara, to San Diego, to Los Angeles. But if you were to ask most people, like, "Oh, you're going? Are you taking the train?" Their response would be, there's a train. Like they don't know. It's not a thought in their head to go, well, should I drive, fly, or take the train? So we view that our first thing is like, how do we make a splash to really get it in the American consumer's mind that, hey, trains are an option.
That just led to another question. Again, it's probably too early, but I rode Brightline between Orlando and Miami in like the first month or so of their service.
And can you remind me how long that takes again?
Between 3 and 3.5 hours.
Okay.
And part of the enjoyment for me of taking the train to Springfield from Chicago, which is about 3.5 hours, You know, I kind of enjoy the train horn as we cross the crossing every mile. It's part of knowing that you're going fast because the more the train is blowing, the faster you're going, right?
Yeah.
Um, and but Brightline had an announcement that the horn blowing is perfectly normal. Meaning to me a couple of things. One, maybe we shouldn't expect there to be that many crossings and have the horn being blowing all the time, though that's not something you're going to fix in this one. But the more important was there were a lot of new people to train riding on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what's the thought about how you help people understand what you have to do to take a train? Like how it's different, what, prepare them mentally for that.
So part of it is, I think actually we're going to be in a world where everything is technology and screens and phone trails. We're going to have a very old technology, human people on the train to be like, hey, let me show you how to you get in your seat, how to use the stuff and load things here, load things there. So they really can understand how to make the most of the experience while they get on. So that's like an example of one way that in the beginning, we're going to be doing that. And we can, because one of the advantages is, we have a lower rider volume than like a daytime commuter service.
Okay. And then that just led me to one more. So you are planning on food service, but I thought one of the advantages of having a tight schedule like this is you don't really need to have food service. So tell me about your thinking around that. What's the food service like? How does it attract people, etc.?
On this first route, it's probably going to be more like light bites and cocktails and local wines. So for people who want like something kind of in the evening, it will be available. But it's this first route. It's a real tough sell to do on board full dining service. So we've looked at, and this is nothing that we've committed to, but we're looking at perhaps we do like a dining facility in one of the stations. Like we partner with somebody to set up like a nice place to have a meal before you get on the train, say in Union Station or just outside of Union Station or somewhere around 4th and King. So that those
And
are
for
kind of
for the foamer types, the pie will be cut. The pie slices will be a quarter of the pie, not a sixth of the pie. Harvey House recipe.
And very thick railroad French toast in the morning, right?
Yeah, and well, so as we do some longer routes, it may make sense to have a full dining car. Obviously, I think everyone knows that's a huge cost center, and it's more so when we're not serving the dinner hour, which we won't be. We do want to have this to be like a plush upscale experience, so you will be able to get some kind of food, whether it's salads, local wines, that kind of thing. And we're looking at kind of a almost like a DoorDash model for breakfast, as in the train stops at, I don't know, Morgan Hill or Gilroy, and people can have ordered meals that are delivered to the train. We're looking at that.
So, as a
So if you
non,
guys know any good restaurants in like the South Santa Clara Valley, drop us a line.
okay. Excellent. So those are the questions I have. This is a very exciting prospect. Chris, do we have any others from the audience?
We sure do. We'll get to as many as we can. Right off the bat, Greenie asks about getting a copy of your slides. We'll leave that, Joshua and Thomas, for you to decide later if you'd like to actually share a copy of your slides. But I will say that a recording of this will be made available at hsrail.org/events. We keep an archive of all the recordings of all the talks like this that we do, and we probably have 60 or 70 at this point. So please check those out if you'd like, hsrail.org/events. Moving into more substantive questions. You showed a lot of visuals, including the exteriors, but Andrew and Gary, we had a couple questions looking for a little bit more about the train sets. What will the train sets look like when completed? How many cars and locomotives, things like that? Can you say more about that?
So Josh, you want to take that one?
Sure.
Uh, Yeah, I mean, well, just generally, I mean, the initial contest we're looking at will probably be 4 revenue cars plus a lounge car, one train in each direction. We have options for locomotives, whether it will be acquired or leased or how. That depends on what the best framework is there.
Great, thanks.
And then we expect to expand that. Touching on Rick's comment about future expansion, we will know by the success of the first route just how deep this demand is. If we can fill up the equivalent of a regional jet, then we need a certain number of airline passengers between two cities to know that it's worth going there. On the other hand, if we're filling up the equivalent of two 737s, a lot of markets that we've looked at that are sort of less than our initial estimate of how much traffic we need become viable. Right? Because we can't obviously make a profit on 20 riders a day. We can, if we have 120 riders, then things like Kansas City, Denver start looking very attractive.
Great. Well, running with that, what you just said there, Thomas, maybe you just need more time to figure this out and actually launch the service. But Alex asked, how much market share of overnight travel between LA and San Francisco do you expect to capture?
That's a great question. Joshua has the exact percentage our business model is based on. I don't remember offhand, but we do very well with a sub 1% market capture.
And part of this is a
And we
function
think
that
we will probably get substantially more than that.
and part of this is just because it's such a big travel corridor. So many people are driving and flying every day.
Millions and millions, as they say. I just dated myself.
I got it. Let's see, moving along. Jay asks, will this operate completely independently of Amtrak in terms of motive power and schedule? Let me stop there.
Tom?
So we don't anticipate needing to work closely with Amtrak. I'll just leave it at that. We're keeping our options open, but we see the advantage of working with a different transit provider for operations and maintenance.
And as far as scheduling, we're focused on routes or corridors there's no equivalent service that the last thing we want to do is like poach riders. We really think that our business will be in a position to bring new riders into trains. So we want to focus on areas that are currently underserved.
Yeah, so we're not going to go head to head with, say, the Crescent on its current schedule.
Okay, great. Speaking of areas that are underserved, Coleman asked a related question. Will your service be point to point, or will there be stops along the way, such as in rural areas?
Okay, so that's I guess operational left. So it will generally be point-ish to point-ish.
Yeah, region to region.
Yeah, we don't want to be stopping at 3 o'clock in the morning and waking everybody up. On the other hand, the great advantage to a train over a plane is that a plane can't take off and then immediately land in a suburb and pick some more people up. So we're looking at having a number of stops relatively close to the first one. So, for example, leaving LA, we would probably stop a couple places in the San Fernando Valley, someplace in Ventura County, Santa Barbara, and then everybody goes to sleep, and we just all do that long stretch up the coast. We have a crew change at Dark 30, and then we arrive in the Bay Area and have a few intermediate stops before we get to the final terminal.
Okay, great. Let's see. Since these will be night trains, what will happen during the day? Will they simply be parked waiting for the next trip?
Parked, maintained, turned around. Again, the advantage to this is we've got a lot more time to turn around than some of the day trains that try to fit multiple trips in a day, or airlines where you try to do the Southwest Airlines, half an hour pit stop turnaround. So we're able to do that economically, and we're obviously going to have to find a place to park them during the day where they don't get tagged or vandalized. But we've got some options for that.
Okay. And we have a lot of questions about the auto option, and I know that you said that there are important details still to be worked out there, but let's try some of these questions anyway. There may be things to discuss here. Is there anything that you can say at this stage about how the vehicle loading and unloading would work? Luke asks about that, and do you anticipate acquiring property at? Well, no, that's another question. Do you know how the vehicle loading and unloading would work at this stage?
There's a couple different options, and right now, we're trying to figure out which ones work. Because it's also a function of, okay, are stations okay with this? How do we do it? Does it make sense to do it somewhere else at a stub station and then connect on the main? These are all details that we're trying to figure out, still. And it's kind of a function of, okay, where's the track X agreements? What are our agreements that we can reach with stations? But we have multiple options that we've kind of identified as a way to do it. You know, so I guess that's all I can really say right now.
Okay. A clarifying question. Will you have to bring a car like Amtrak's Auto Train, or will it be possible to travel without one?
No, you do not have to bring a car.
Great.
In fact, I suspect with the rise of self-driving technologies, over a 10, 15-year period, we might even see car ridership fall. I don't know. It's hard to say, right? LA and San Francisco are unique in that they both have the first autonomous taxi services, right? The Waymos. I don't think they're operating in the broader San Jose area or outside of West Side LA, but for people who are only going to, downtown San Francisco or West Side LA, they might not need a car.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and that will probably be good news to the person who asked the question. Do you plan to attract people who don't travel or who travel without a car? With this model, it seems like the terminals will be in the suburbs, which are not accessible by public transit, but it sounds like you're anticipating that too.
Well, so the downtown station will be that is accessible by public transit. Whenever there's any rain in LA, and I have to go from my home in Orange County to Los Angeles, I take Metrolink. I take the train because, frankly, nobody in this town knows how to drive in anything more than heavy dew, and I can get to a station within 20 minutes. I can take Metrolink downtown in 50 minutes, and now that the LA Metro subway is cleaned up a bit, I can very easily get to wherever I have to go downtown. Elsewhere, LA is famously sprawled out with lots of centers. There's some issues with that, but again, with self-driving cars and Uber, it's actually workable. It's a great. LA is more survivable without a car than I think conventional wisdom would have it.
Great.
in fact, a lot of young people in Los Angeles don't even own automobiles anymore. Like the demographic of under 25, the car ownership is substantially lower, which is crazy to me. Like I have a cousin who's in this demographic, and I don't know about everybody here, but I got a driver's license as soon as I could. You're right, that was freedom, like growing up, like in the suburbs. But with the rise of Uber, he's like, no, me and all my friends just Uber wherever we're going. Oh, that's different than my experience as a 17-year-old.
Well, here's one more question about cars. Boyce asks, do you anticipate or want to have rental cars available at the train stations?
Yes, we want to have our app be as seamless as possible, kind of a all-inclusive. We're going to get you from wherever you are to wherever you want to be. So if we do it right, and I think we've got the people to do that, we'll not only have rental cars, we'll have them spotted at the station. We can get you within 10 feet of the elevator where you're trying to get.
Great. Well, from cars to dogs, Lena asks, what would the experience of bringing your dog on board be like? And would dogs be allowed in the room with you or just somewhere in the car?
Joshua, so the operational questions, I think I'll probably just butt in first, but bottom line is, I think at the very least they can just be brought in a small container into the, or what's the word? Crate into like the double rooms, the executive rooms that have the bath and shower facilities. Whether they fit in the single accommodations, I don't. That's up in the air. As long as they don't poop on the floor, we're good.
Yeah, no poop or pee, please.
Let's see. So we've talked a little bit about station locations, and here's a detailed question about that from Bob. What's the status of access to Caltrain's San Jose to San Francisco route and San Francisco station?
Well, that's going to be the last piece of the puzzle. I think we've gotten farthest with UP, next farthest with Metrolink, and the last piece of the puzzle will be Caltrain. We're in contact and discussions with them, and that's, I think, all we can say, right, Joshua?
That's about right.
Here is another question about the experience of traveling with your service. Gary asks about checked baggage. Will that be an option?
Yes.
Well, I would say that I mean, go for it, Tom.
So yes, I mean, there's plenty of room in at least the double bedrooms, but we are anticipating having a checked baggage for a fee less than the airlines typically.
Okay. And now let's talk about geography, I guess, and broadening the service as you previewed that you want to do. This talk today has certainly sparked a lot of interest, and a lot of comments and questions are about the possibility or that possibility that you mentioned of serving other parts of the country. So let's kick off a list of those with a comment from John, who's talking about travel from the Twin Cities to Chicago. He says, a full day in Chicago with no need for a hotel is a deal maker for me. I can't be the only one. Is that possibility on your radar? And then rather than asking you to respond individually to each of these, I guess I'm going to just list off the other ones that people have asked about. Someone asked about Seattle to LA, San Francisco to San Diego, Florida to Atlanta, Chicago to St. Louis, Chicago to Niagara Falls, New York City to Montreal or Toronto. And then Coleman asked a good question, which sort of, maybe can bring all those together. What routes are at the top of your list for potential development, or do you think have the greatest potential?
So that gets us into some more confidential business planning. We have actually started work on some additional routes. I'll put it that way. And I will also say that there is a lot of overlap between what I'm seeing on the comments, on the chat comments, and what we've looked at. If you can see a couple of major markets that are roughly 10 hours apart by rail, you can probably imagine that we've looked very closely at them. Without going into detail, we have looked very closely at the Southeast. There's just some economic growth there and some difficulties of travel. And if you look at some of the average airfares, they're actually quite high. So there's some demand there. I wanted to maybe riff on that question and maybe bring us back to how we tie into the high-speed rail network. High-speed rail, I think, is a no-brainer where the market exists for distances up to about 300 miles, right? We start with the premise that an airline trip for short distances will take you up to 5 hours between getting to the airport, getting through the airport, getting the actual short flight, and then getting back from the airport. So we basically have 5 hours to work with, 5 waking hours, that is. So you've got a 300-mile high-speed rail tip, say New York to Pittsburgh. And then the overnight model allows that stretch between 300 to almost 800 to be covered in 2 or 3 waking hours. So, potentially we could have connection of a huge percent of markets with a combined overnight plus a high-speed rail 300-mile segment. Opens it up far more than just the straight overnight or the straight high-speed market. So we think that night trains are a necessary complement to high-speed rail in a nation the size of the United States. You can connect the more distant mega regions with overnight trains, and then you can travel within the mega regions or between, adjacent, close adjacent mega regions with high-speed rail.
Sounds good.
Chris, I saw one question we haven't touched on in the chat. You mind if I answer it?
No, go for it.
Someone asked a very good question about Wi-Fi. This is a thing that it's crazy that we have to ask that question. The answer should obviously be, of course. We should have high-speed internet on trains all the time. The good news is latest technology inventions such as Marlink, or that rhyme with Marlink, Starlink, have made it much, much easier for us to provide a high quality level of service. And that is one of the technologies that we'll probably be deploying in order to kind of create that high-speed internet experience.
All right, great. And there are a few other questions about sort of levels of service. Samuel and Patty ask about options such as, will there be coach service for those who can still sleep overnight in a chair, or is that something that you're at least open to considering? Or maybe pod or economy sleeper options?
So in the long term, yeah, we're probably going to look at like the big picture here in terms of how Tom and I are thinking about transportation is how do you make it cheaper for like more affordable for more people to get where they want to go while still providing a really high quality level of service. So that's kind of like the approach that guides us. We're going much like how Tom said that the Tesla route of, hey, we're starting with a more premium accommodation. And as the business scales, we can offer more cost-effective solutions, but still provide a higher quality level of service. So that's kind of whether that ends up being, coach or Rick, you were talking about like the night jet. What'd you call them? Coffins?
Pods, I think.
Yeah,
But
based on the video reviews, I would not recommend those.
Yeah, and it's a funny because it's culture, right? So we're dealing with the American culture in mind of like, okay, I can come in and say I have these great ideas and I think I'm so smart, but I try not to argue with reality because it often makes me look stupid. So what do people want? And like we're structuring the business in such a way where we can call it a fair amount of experimentation as we grow to go, oh, people really like this. Let's do that. I think that's like a core philosophy of like building a customer-centric transportation company is like founding level DNA for us.
Yeah, I've got to say, I think it would be different if I was in my 20s, especially early 20s. Maybe I would do one of those little pods.
Oh, Rick, I'm right with you. I was in my early 20s because this is actually part of how I got into this. I took night trains all over Europe and I thought, well, America's great, but that's a great idea and we should steal it.
And it's certainly better than the open couchettes that are pretty standard.
yeah, it's just not an American thing. We tend to like our privacy a bit more.
Yeah.
Joshua, I know you need to go very soon. Thomas, are you able to stay for a couple more questions?
Sure, if Joshua trusts me not to give away the store.
It's fine.
Well, here's one more service question, or there are a couple more, I guess. But Andrew had a few questions. One of which is, have you considered teaming up with a tour operator that would sell as a package tickets to some nighttime event like a ball game or concert with an overnight return via Dreamstar?
Yes.
Yep, that's a great idea. We've also looked at in one of our hopefully future, as in before the LA Olympics routes, a national park connection.
Okay. And then Luke asks, in terms of pricing, he says, I assume this service would be aligned with a luxury hotel or Amtrak sleeper pricing versus an overnight bus or Amtrak coach seating, something like that. Can you speak to rough numbers for the cost of a
Yeah, very rough. And Joshua might want to elaborate on this, but we don't anticipate being as high as Amtrak sleeping cars.
Yeah. So the way we're thinking about it is like what are we replacing? So on the high end, can we be competitive with what Amtrak's currently charging and sometimes selling out? And then on the low end, it's like, okay, can we be cheaper than the cost of a last minute flight? Cheaper than the cost of a flight plus a hotel booked ahead of time, or cheaper than the cost of flying a family of 4? So those
And
are
we're not
kind of
talking luxury hotel either. I mean,
yeah, maybe not a hostel, but
right.
but
Great.
reasonable hotel.
All right. Well, thank you. And let's, this is maybe a great final question. Todd asks, when are you planning to launch?
That is a hard question to answer. People with billions of dollars can't get that right. Granted, their projects are substantially more complex. What we would like to be up and running well before the Summer Olympics in 2028, ideally with some extensions and potentially second route by then. So that's kind of our guiding North Star.
I would say the construction and the design and construction of our equipment we're budgeting 18 to 24 months for, and there's a couple things that need to get worked out before that can start. If everything goes well, there are dates in the near future that well in advance of the 2028 Olympics that could work.
I'm giving a worst case scenario number.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've thrown around some date in 2026, and that still is not unrealistic. Just dominoes need to fall the right way in the next month or so for that to work.
Well, you've certainly sparked a lot of curiosity and interest. So let's wrap it up for today. But thank you both again for speaking. Does anyone have any concluding thoughts before we end? Rick, any final words?
No, I just, I'm really glad you guys are doing this. I'm looking forward to riding the trains. And let us know how we can help move it forward. And again, for those joining us, thank you very much for joining us. And if you would like to keep this momentum going for all kinds of great trains all across America, please go to highspeedrail.us and hit that click that become a member button. So thank you again.
Can I have one last thing?
Yes.
Today, if you'd like to follow us more closely, I'm pretty active on social media, on just my personal, on Twitter, LinkedIn, and then you can also go to the website. And if you drop your email in there, you get on our update list, which we send out updates when we have them. And we also have hats. We have them in black and white. So if you want to show your support, they look quite good in person. People often ask where they can get them. So now you all know.
Yeah, we are officially not a pre-revenue company anymore. We sold a couple of hats.
So.
Right.
At least they're not flamethrowers. So again, thank you very much for giving this presentation, and thanks to everybody online for joining us. And we look forward to our talking again. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.